Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Alkebulan Awakening series. Once again, myself, Oladre Sumo, as always, the co-founder of Emerging Alkebulan. We're here to decolonize the man and awaken the mindsets of our diasporan brothers and our continental brothers, wherever you are. My sister.
Habari gani, karibuni, asanteni. The name is Nduku, an African woman who is finally decided to take control of our narrative and counter the false narrative that Western media has propagated against Africa and Africans everywhere. I'm looking forward to the conversation with our elders today.
Thank you. Clifton, you want to go?
God, I don't know what to say after following that. Just to say, I'm honoured to be here. My name's Clifton. Clifton McDonald. Yeah, I'm born and raised here, but I see myself as, and when I say here, born and raised in London. In terms of heritage and background, Jamaican parentage, but also as someone who's recently kind of done his DNA, I've got Nigerian. I'm
Wow.
60 odd percent Nigerian.
Wow, my brother.
Yeah, I've got Ivory Coast, I've got Ghana, I've got Mali in terms of
Wow.
my kind of bloodline, and so I was very pleased to recognise that I'm 99% West African. So
Amen to
in terms of my background, so that's a little bit about me in terms of where I've been thrown.
Wow, how do you follow that? Yeah. Right. Ghana via Jamaica here. And I'm Ghanaian by my DNA. And so it's I'm feeling very much part of the Alkebulan. I feel part of it. I'm drinking it in. I'm looking it in. It's the glasses through which I look, and it's the words that I speak. So I'm really happy to be a part of that. I'm part of that by the divine balance with the woman here. You know, the feminine energy in the room. To balance out the male energy, the Heru energy in the room, and it's such a good feel to be sitting next to my brother here, Brother Clifton. So welcome.
Thank you, guys. Okay. Zenduka, you want to say something before they...
How much is my friend interfering? I'm okay with her and her sounds because she seems to be comfortable sitting by me and tweeting. Let me know if I need to mute her or she's good.
It's good. It's good.
All right. Okay, let's continue.
Okay. Today's topic is eldership. Eldership in the Alkebulan. So my brother Clifton and from brother Eli are going to take the topics away. As always, they're going to do the presentation, and then if you got any questions, anything that strikes you, or anything that stands up to you while you're listening, please put it in the chat so we can actually ask the questions afterwards. So, my brother Clifton and Eli, if you want to take the topic away, thank you very much, sir.
Okay. As the elder of the two, out of me and Eli, it kind of falls on me first and foremost to say, if we're talking about eldership, one of the first things I'm kind of tasked to do is to ask for permission to speak. Oladele, I understand that you're the elder representing the Alkebulan. Do I have your permission to speak, sir?
You got wholehearted permission, my brother. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And thank you. And the reason that's important for us to start there is I think too often we have people that come and speak to the community, right? And they don't ask for permission, right? And me asking permission, and that being granted, it means that Oladele, you hold some responsibility in terms of what I say, and that I kind of come with my truth, whatever that is. And actually, if I don't, it's your responsibility to hold me to account. yeah, for that. The other thing as well, me asking for permission also means that I have to come with that certain um, degree of actually coming and speaking my truth, right? And so there's a responsibility, and what that does is sets a kind of a two-way thing up, and so it's really, really important for us to kind of start there. Um, and so, with that said, yeah, that I think that's really important. Um, yeah, Eli, do you want to say anything?
No, I mean, I think you that it is the basis upon which we're talking about Ubuntu. It is the basis upon which we operate together. You know, because as far as if we talk about asking permission, we're also asking for divine energy. We're also asking for intergenerational support. We're also asking for the ancestors to sit with us, and the ancestors are everywhere. And if we have permission from the ancestors, from your point of view, sir, then what it means is that we are, if we can imagine that we are sitting in a huge galactic group of people for whom we must speak our truth and we must speak our purpose. So there's not something that you can just say and hope for the best. That is why we are doing what we're doing. It's a spiritual journey and one which requires a great deal of knowledge and understanding. So that being said, shall I carry on, Brother Clifton?
Yeah, just a couple of things. I mean, before you move, and to say, I mean, I got that in terms of former practice from Dr. Wade Nobles, and it's really important to kind of acknowledge Dr. Wade Nobles, who's an African American psychologist. And excuse me, I've got a bit of a tickly throat, and I got it when he did a talk, a series of talk where he talked about educating African American and Caribbean children for eternity. Right, I attended that lecture that he did in 1988, and it blew my mind. It was very, very powerful in terms of the way he kind of delivered, and I suppose that's really for me that really informed my practice. That's really important to kind of acknowledge those that you get, and what he says is that actually when we come, it has to be out of practice. It's not just something that we kind of say and then don't do. Right. I think too often sometimes you say things and then you don't practice it. So it's really important that that is practiced. Um, yeah. So I think that's kind of all I wanted to kind of acknowledge who I got that from, who I saw very much as an elder and as a teacher. So
Mm.
that's that. Over to you, Eli.
The issue that the power of this particular question that you've raised for us about eldership and why it is important to communities, there are a number of different levels uh, that that begins to strike at. First of all, eldership is a process. So it's not something that when you hit an age, it becomes something you do. It's something that actually becomes a process that when you get to a particular point, you are given understanding of the tools that you must have in order to do something. Um, we have gone through process, so therefore, when we are able to talk about eldership, we're talking about it from a very, very clear understanding. And the work that we do, we recognize that many people don't have that process. So we have to create a process that allows them to be able to sit in that space and recognize what type of elder they are and what that eldership in terms of the role, the responsibility, and the tools that they have, but also requires them to be very clear about what it means to put on that uh, that mantle of eldership. it's one of those huge, it's when people recognize that the mantle of eldership or becoming an elder, when they actually understand what it means, it weighs heavy, because it means that in a way, one can no longer skirt around the edges. You know, you can say I'm an elder, but actually that has such a deep responsibility that you cannot just simply walk around thinking that you are it. I mean, certainly, if you don't have to go very far, you can go to the North Americans, you can go Canadians, you can obviously most of Africa, most of Alkebulan, and you will find the same response. Although there are some major issues right now that we are facing to do with the clarity. It's a little bit like, I think the only way of explaining it is that in general, and you might need to, I stand to be corrected, that many places are left with a language and maybe a few bits of tradition, but the culture is missing. And an example of that, and that's even saying it is quite sad, really, that the impact of programming, the impact of colonialism has done such a great job that it's literally, it's almost like, you know, those Russian dolls, that you get all those dolls there, but there's actually nothing inside them. And I think what we have found is that because we're operating from an African spirituality context, that's where our work is based in. We are following a rites of passage model. And the impact that that has on our people is so huge. It's so huge that people have to look inside of themselves. They have to mine some of those tools in order to be able to be present for themselves. And so the language isn't enough. But the great thing that we have as in the work that we do, and the great thing that we have as human beings, is that the culture, the spiritual context, the understanding of who we are is recorded in our DNA. So we've got a whole range of things that actually require certain things in order to make those things jump and become part of who we are, part of our beings. And so we do that we've created this particular, I don't want to call it a program, but experience that means that people begin to tap into who they are through their DNA, amplified by their melanin and amplified by the words that are around them and amplified within a group. And with the different layers that we pull together, people then begin to understand that eldership is not just something that lasts now. It's something that's intergenerational. And that for me becomes, I don't think that's the whole thing in a nutshell, but what you begin to understand there is that moving from child to elder is a process that very rarely exists in certain places. And it is that process that, because of its lack of existence, causes huge amounts of mental health, huge amounts of issues with our physicality, huge amount of issues with how we think, our intellectual abilities, all those sorts of things. An example of that in Kenya, it's all over Africa, but definitely in Kenya, where Ruto was actually said, "I'm really sorry, I'm not going to sign off the bill." Right? That was down to people power. But as an elder, as soon as he saw that, he had a responsibility to the people not to be pushing it through until people got upset and were being tear gassed and shot at and all. As an elder, where's the understanding that you are there only because of them? You're not there because of yourself. We had a conversation yesterday, and our sister Marlene said, people in leadership are empowered people, are not people with power. So that the person who has got that relationship, that responsibility, is there to be empowered for the community, and not just for the community, but empowered for their life and the intergenerational chronology of the community. That's what you're there for. Fukai, there's a guy called Fukai, talks about, in terms of the community, the Gara community, he talks about when you are given a responsibility, the responsibility is such that if you fail, don't come back. You're not there to fail. There's a huge weight on your shoulder, because when you go and speak on behalf of someone, that's why we ask for permission, because it is you are now responsible for this community of how many thousands of people. If you undermine that responsibility that you're given, what will happen to you? Those are the sorts of things that politicians should be saying. What's going to happen to me if I mess up? If I mess up the whole community for the next 4 generations, what's going to happen to me? And nobody has that. From our standpoint, it is a responsibility. People like Mansa Musa doesn't just walk out and hope for the best. You don't have the Floric emperors, the empire doesn't just hope for the best. People within who have run the Songhai kingdom and the Mali kingdom, they were there for a reason, and they had a huge responsibility, and that's why we still refer to them, because of the level of the responsibility that has rippled across time. So, as an elder, I guess that we are responsible for space and time, and we're responsible for the ancestors that have given us the responsibility to have action and change things. That is, in a nutshell, that's what we're here for. That's not, and we can be different types of elders, but we have huge responsibilities that go beyond us, beyond our lifetimes. And those are the sorts of things that we seriously, when we deliver the program of understanding eldership, that's what is in our minds, in our bodies, in our rituals, every time we deliver that. Is that making any sense? We've lost you.
Yeah,
sorry.
it's making a
100%.
100%. Yeah, we're following.
Yeah.
I'm writing stuff down as you're talking. So yeah, we're gonna interject. We'll keep you flowing for now.
Oh, okay. Brother Clifton, is there anything you want to add, sir?
I suppose all I want to say, I mean, Eli talked about rites of passage, and I think it's important for me, as we talk about rites of passage, to actually say what rites of passage is, or certainly what it means to me and my understanding. And actually, for me, rites of passage kind of runs through the whole life cycle. Yeah, my understanding of it, that actually a child being born and being prepared to be born, that's a rites of passage. Yeah, child going from, going into adolescent, that's a rites of passage. And actually becoming an adult and elders, I mean, there's a rites of passage. And even the preparation of becoming an ancestor, that again is a rites of passage. And how I understand rites of passage, all right, it's been broken down to me, and certainly I got that from Paul Hill Jr., is that, we should ask ourselves 4 questions, right? The first question is, who am I? Yeah. The second question is, am I who I say I am? Yeah. The third, am I all I ought to be? And the fourth is, am I living my life's purpose? Yeah. So those are the questions you ask yourself. And for me, the second and third one are really interesting because I can say this is who I am, right? And the second one is, am I who I say I am, is where the test comes, right? Is we have the kind of tests and, we're tested, right? And from those tests, normally we find out who we say we are isn't that at all, right? And actually then we're left with that third question, am I all I ought to be, right? And more often than not, the answer is no. And actually, once you also answer those questions, is, am I living my life's purpose? And for me, I kind of realize is that when I began to really talk and look into living my life's purpose, right, it then becomes, I think Eli kind of alluded to it, it then becomes no ifs and buts about what I'm here to do, right? I've no other thing than to do what that purpose is. For me, not to live that purpose, right, is actually I'm not really living. I'm only playing, I'm pretending, all of that kind of thing. And so for me, that's what I kind of loved about that kind of process, right? Really looking at those 4 questions. And those questions, I also feel that they're not also a one-time answer. It's not something I kind of go through and I say, yeah. You know what I mean? I'm constantly having to really grapple with that, right? And I'm constantly having tests that I have to look at and all of that kind of thing. And so I kind of like that for me. And I suppose in terms of like what Eli says, when we, in terms of the program Understanding Eldership, those are the kind of questions that we kind of are posing to people, right? We're asking, to really kind of asking those questions, who are you? Yeah. And are you saying who you are? And what we're finding through that is some amazing transformation that are taking place for people, right? People are sharing, and I think there's an aspect about us being able to also tell our stories, which often than not, we don't have the opportunity to tell very often. We have, again, I think in the society we live in, we have other people that are telling our stories for us, and sometimes even interpreting whatever it is we say. And so for me, that it's about really beginning to kind of tell our stories on our own terms and really exploring what does that mean. And sometimes I know I hear myself and it's like, rah, did I say that? Right. And then I have to really kind of look at myself and check myself. So I think that's part of what it is. And what we also say to people, and I know when we talk about even understanding eldership, people ask us, what is it? And we say it's really hard to really define because it's actually, whatever it is, it's actually what it means for the individual, right? It's not us actually saying to people what eldership means to, it's not us saying this is what eldership is. It's for them going on their own journey of exploring what eldership means to them. And again, as I said, that's kind of really powerful. And I'm gonna, one of the other thing I said, I remember I was reading a book called The Art of Leadership, and the author's name kind of escapes me at the moment. And he talks about from what I remember, he's a white European who spent time in Africa. All right. And he talked about spending time in a village. And he said, each night, he said in that village, people sat around a campfire and shared stories. And he said how vibrant it was. He said 20 years later, he went back to that same village. And he said each little dwelling has now got electricity, has light. And he said now, they no longer share stories. And he said what he saw was that village was dying, because it's the sharing of the stories, right, is what keeps people alive.
Yeah.
And I know what really fascinated me, and sometimes I think proverbs are an interesting thing. And I remember, I love the proverb, when an elder dies, a library burns to the ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. When an elder dies, a library burns to the ground. And when that really hit home to me was when my mum passed away. I mean, both my mum and dad have passed away, right? And it really hit me because there's some stories and some things even around the family, right, that's gone with them.
Mm.
Yeah. And, you know, me and my sisters were trying to kind of piece some of those fragments together, right, and all of that. Whereas my mum was here. I mean, my mum was the storyteller. My mum was the one that, you know, kind of certainly shared the family history. My dad was man of few words, but my dad was one that would say just, you know, he just had some of those amazing sayings, which again I kind of look at, and you know, even as a child growing up, you know, they would say things, and I was kind of thinking, what does that mean, right? Most of it didn't understand, but as I've got older and wiser, I knew that I now begin to understand what it was, and that there were parts of them that were trying to transmit information into me, not direct, but in proverbs and sayings and all of that kind of thing, that sometimes made me stop and think, Mum or Dad is trying to tell me something, right? And there's a part of me kind of think, if they tried to tell me direct, I wouldn't have actually even heard it. But as I've got older and kind of think, and I sit with some of that, it's like, aha, now I know what it is you were talking about, right? I know what it was that you were trying to say. And so I do see that part of my response, even as an elder, and I'm one of, for my parents, I'm one of 5. Yeah. And I'm the oldest out of the 5. And so I've begun to realize, with the passing of my parents, there were certain things that it's really important to begin to share some of those family stories. And what's amazing for me is the children and grandchildren, when they hear it, they love hearing it, right? And sometimes they're not only thirsty, they're hungry. Some of them are starving for that knowledge, and we have a responsibility to share it and for them to be able to hear it in a way that really resonates with them. So yeah, that's kind of what comes up for me based on what Eli says.
Yeah, brilliant. Ella, you want to add to that?
Yes, I mean, it feels as though we've rehearsed this, but it hasn't.
We've not even talked.
I mean, one of the things that is so critical about the, you know, Brother Clifton talks about the process by which we become elders, and talked about what we are trying to do, which is not just, you know, something we're trying to deliver in the UK. It's something we're trying to deliver across the world. So we're seeing that we've got to reach, you know, 1 billion human beings in Africa, 1 billion human beings in North America. These are the sorts of numbers we need to be working with. But what it does do, it shows that eldership is the cornerstone of our communities. Without that understanding, that accumulation of knowledge, that accumulation of wisdom, that accumulation of tools and understanding that actually people younger that don't have. When that goes, there is nothing to replace it. And that's where the vacuum of, shall we say, people who are not like Alkebulans can place I mean, it's actually a bit like Frantz Fanon, where Frantz Fanon talks about this vacuum from which we begin to exist. And we see ourselves as reflections of those who we see as the ideal space, the ideal person, the ideal structure, the ideal education, the ideal, when in fact it's not the ideal. That we have this. I'm being very diplomatic here, but
That's all right. You can say what you want to say, man.
there are many things that we do to ourselves to make ourselves look like someone else.
Yeah, make ourselves look stupid, basically.
We make ourselves look different. Now we have to really begin to think, what does that mean? Who are we trying to look like? Why are we trying to look like that? And if in fact there were elders, if in fact the elders brought the understanding of cornrow, or the understanding of the dress that we wear. So I've got kente, but one of the things that happened when I understood about kente was actually kente, the actual dye, is a medicine. That's how we are walking around. And the word medicine means the art of healing. And you can see that permeates every single thing that we do as people from Alkebulan. The food that we eat, which is being damaged and challenged, the things we put on our face, which is damaged and challenged, the words we have in our mouth to be taken away from as a language, how we see things, how we think about things. So you can imagine that one by one, this medicine that we use to make ourselves human is being removed from us one by one. And what those, if you think we're doing something in Uganda at the moment, and what is really important is that the women there are experiencing menopause. Many of the women are experiencing, which is in effect, and Dr. Yancey talks about it, that actually the menopause for women is part of their understanding of rites of passage, part of their right, because they go through this thing. We don't, but women do. And instead of seeing it as a sickness, but as a part of the rites of passage, then the medicines we would use are, how does our language help us to understand that it's not an illness, but part of who we are? How does our community respond to that by saying, okay, this is what you're going through now. The community will make sure that the family is okay. We will look after those children. I remember delivering a lecture which talking about the power of the elder. And one of the people within there who came from, he didn't come from Tanzania, I think he came from Namibia. And he was saying when he was a child in his village, he could never remember being hungry at all. And we asked him why, and he said, because everybody fed me. Everybody fed me. Yeah, Ubuntu. You know, when I went to Jamaica on my visits, I came back a stone heavier, you know, because people wouldn't allow me to not have ackee and saltfish or this Johnny cake, which in the UK was like this, but in Jamaica it's like this, you know, patties being like this, mangoes being like this, you know, everything was different, but people wanted to make sure that you were okay. It was built into them. And so imagine those people who want to give you medicine, who want to look after you, gone. The silence is there. The silence is there. And we are all saying that those people who look after our medicine, how we say things, what we believe, what we think, as Brother Clifton talks about Proverbs, those things that are planted in us for us to grow when we grow, those things are virtually the responsibility of the elders. And if those elders are not planting seeds, the only example of that is GMO seeds. Because effectively what you have to do is buy the seeds, plant it, but it dies. So you have to buy it again. Where can we buy the wisdom that is for us? Where is that wisdom? I read something yesterday morning, talks about biomedicine and biodetic medicine, something like that, two things. And they're saying biomedicine is the medicine that reacts with everything that's in us. The other type of medicine is the medicine that's created to look like that medicine, but has side effects. So if I have spinach that's grown out of my garden, that's not going to give me a problem because I can eat it. But if somebody's created GMO medicine and they put that spinach, which is yellow and blue, and I eat it, I can't be expected not to feel bad. So on those levels, what we're trying to do is that the work that we are doing is bioidentical medicine because it's within us already. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to ensure that we bloom, we grow, we develop. Right? So the proverbs, the food, the way we cook, the way we speak to each other. When we say hello, we don't just say hello, we hug each other. So from our touch, from our senses, from what we say, to how we see things, to how we believe things, all that we are walking around with our medicine. And once that medicine is compromised in any shape or form, we find ourselves with mental health issues. We find ourselves, as you said, Brother Clifton, we find ourselves hungry for something. But instead of drinking water, which is going to hydrate us, we'll spend ourselves eating food that begins with big M's, or things that begin with KF, or things that have damage. They taste good at the beginning, but they damage us later on. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to reawaken that medicine, and we're trying to ensure that there is a community of elders that are there across the world. So we need to be doing 1 billion elders in order to safeguard the people that are growing. We need to be doing that. We haven't got the time to be. We haven't got the time to people who don't want to listen. We haven't got that time.
No, we haven't.
Sorry. Right.
Yeah, it's okay. I was just gonna speak to that because basically based on what you both were saying, and as you both talking, it's deep, and we are basically moving completely away from ourselves completely. And as you're saying that, I feel sad listening to what you're saying and knowing what's happening to us as Africans, as Alkebulans worldwide. We're just moving away, completely losing ourselves. In terms of so my first question to you guys is basically eldership. It's the key that ties everything together for us. I'll say diaspora, and I'll say obviously an Nigerian African. I've seen both sides, and as I go home and I see elders, and we as Africans we lose in respect for our elders a lot because you're talking about responsibility. It looks like our elders are not being responsible any longer. So for that reason, the youth or the generation that's coming don't seem to respect them. And I put this way because, as Clifton did say, eldership means responsibility. So we look at the governments that we had in the past, and he's talking about Ruto saying something and being held to account for what he's saying. So if you look at what's happening in South Africa in terms of the governments we had, in terms of what our elders are doing, basically they have not been a good example to the youth coming up. So for that reason, it looks like they've lost their respect. So how can we get that kind of respect back? Because somebody who, like I said, I go back and forth to Nigeria and I see what's happening. And whenever I go, sometimes I feel like crying because I could see how we're completely losing it. How do we get back?
Sorry, go on, Oladide.
Yeah. So my question is, how do we get that respect back? Because in the diaspora, we we crave that African culture. We want to be part of it. We're desperate for it. But on the continent, they have it. And you said something about language and not having a culture. That's basically what's happening on the continent right now. Yeah, because you were saying that it clicked and it registered. How do we get this back? Because most people in the continent are losing it because they seem to want to embrace everything other than themselves, but everything else that's pushed towards them. Guys,
just to attach to Oladile's question, because before both of you, Eli and Clifton, respond to it, and also because I'm focused on us actually addressing the root of the problem as opposed to the symptoms. I think elders not being responsible is just a symptom. I think the problem is that we've lost the process. How do we return the process? I'm adding that to Oladile's question.
Yeah, brilliant.
Because it's not just one generation. We could say the young people are not listening. So I think we've lost the process.
Can I start, Brother Clifton, and then pass it on to you?
Yeah, you go. Yeah. You go.
Part of the process is not easy. It is not easy. If you say that what you have to do is you have responsibility for more than who you are, it then moves from being individualistic to community. People not, on the whole, are not educated to be in community. You're educated to be, I'm doing my thing, I can do my thing, this is what I'm doing, this is how I'm doing. So you, from the day you go to primary school or nursery, that's what you're taught. You're taught. In family, in groups where people work together as communities, then you get the understanding of being taught. And your history is community, because your history is not just one thing. As we say, African history is world history. You can't make a separation between the two. So when you learn anything about maths, you need to be learning about the rest of the world and how the impact on that on maths is. If you learn biochemistry, you need to be knowing, but even the way we are taught is individualistic. So we have one book that talks about the 5 European scientists, or we have one book around physics that talks about everything without talking about some of the major impacts. And we have this idea of I put this as a Black History Month or African History Month, where we then mine all these Africans that did all this stuff. And all of a sudden, for that 1 month, we find that physics and chemistry and biology and anthropology and all these other ologies had other people invested in them. So the system in which we are living is not community. And if you operate as a community, there are penalties for it. And you can see the penalties for it when you start reeling off those people who began to assert their eldership in the African nations, we know what happened to each one of them. However, the thing that eldership, when we talked about earlier, is that eldership exists beyond time and space. So people are still talking about those people. We're all talking about Nkrumah, even though Nkrumah was exiled, even though there were things about what happened to Nkrumah. So how do we change that? Well, it's not going to be changed in my lifetime. However, some of the things we might be doing is, first of all, join our program. What that means is experience what that is as an elder, experience the understanding of what it means to be an elder, and then do out and apply it. Don't waste time. It is now. This is what we're doing now. In addition to that, I have no power to urge the African countries and the African leaders to do things. But what I would say is change all your education stuff into your own language.
Yes.
How can you, as a country, Nigeria, Tanzania, Kenya, Ghana, how can you have your textbooks that you are learning earth sciences in English or French? How can you do that? That completely undermines, in Ghana, 70 languages, 70 different languages, 9 major languages. How can you do that? How can you not have your textbook in Herero? How can you not have your textbooks in Bengali? How can you not have your textbooks in Igbo? How can you not? You can just go on. How can you not do that? Given the fact that we had Timbuktu University, which everybody came to, and these people could speak multiple languages. So these are some of the things that we need to have the way in which we talk to each other, how we create things for each other to understand. And if I'm learning Igbo, if I read Igbo, if I see the language will reflect me, and that is my medicine. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I read English has a level of a frequency that makes me think, believe, and read things differently. And I don't have to know the languages. I apologize, I don't know your languages, but in many African languages, English explanations do not exist. They just don't exist.
No.
They can't exist because it's not part of the culture.
It takes the
And so,
gravity of what you're saying away. It takes the gravity and the depth of meaning away completely.
Of course. So if I say to you, how are you, in English, there's a difference in the way that I say, if I say it in tree. And most African languages will not talk about how are you. They will say, how is your body? And they will go on and say, how is your family? And how is your friend? And how is your grandmother? And how, because we are concerned about you and the people with whom you are connected to. We're not just concerned with you. We're concerned with everybody else. That's Ubuntu in practice. Yeah. And so part of the change in order to become elders is to recognize the importance of what that is, the importance of our language, the importance of being in community, the importance of recognizing that actually we have a serious responsibility to live our purpose. And just exactly what Brother Clifton is talking about. Once you know your purpose, once you put your feet down, that's it. This is what we are doing. And so you create boundaries and you create ways of speaking to people, and you don't let people remove your soul energy and put it somewhere else. The conversations that are happening in government at the moment have got nothing to do with me, because they're just handing the baton on from one person to another. That's them. What I've got to do is realize that, you know, with my brother here and my sister who wasn't able to join us, we've got things to do. We haven't got time to waste. If people want to be part of that experience of becoming an elder, then come walk with us. Now, we've already done that in the US. Yeah, we've done that in this country. And we were very fortunate for the part of the US contingent that came over to this country to see us. When they came over to this country, they were remarking, they said, it feels as though we're brothers and sisters. They have never seen each other before, ever. But they felt they were of one spirit, of one energy, of one vibration, of one language. They hugged each other as though they'd known each other for 20 years. That is the impact of what we do, because our work is based on African spirituality. It's based that way, which means it has no end and no beginning. It is part of how we are birthed and how we move on. It exists outside of us in a way where the ancestors are guiding us to be a part of it. That's where we are working from that energy. That's why those people came and felt as though they were part of something bigger than themselves. Imagine, that was only, how much is it? 20 people, 25 people? Brother Clifton?
Yeah, about 20, yeah.
About 20 people. Imagine if that's 20,000. Imagine if that's 2 million. Imagine if that's 20 million. Imagine if that's 200 million. The whole of Nigeria like that.
Yeah, it's amazing, man.
Nobody would think
scary.
twice. Nobody would think
Yeah.
twice going to Nigeria. It would never happen.
Yeah.
You'd go to Ghana. People would go to Africa just because they thirst for being part of a community that uplifts who they are as human beings. They recognize them as human beings. That's our purpose. That's what we've got to start changing. And any elders who are out there that are heads of countries and want to be part of our program, please come. Because when you pass through this program, you'll be a better elder. I'm not talking about a better president, we're talking about a better elder. Once you're a better elder, you will empower your people because it's going to be part of your purpose.
Wow.
It's going to be part of your purpose. You cannot be a leader without having that purpose. You cannot be an elder without having that purpose. It's one or the other.
I'm glad you said that. I'm thinking currently of someone who we need to take that elder role. And as I continue to think of the people, I will be recommending to them that part of the requirement will be to take your program. I will not trust them until they take your program. No, like, this is the thing, right? We get in these spaces, we talk, but we don't actually change what we talk into action. You're telling us right now that it's important for us to reclaim the process. It's important for those who take eldership to understand the responsibility. We currently have elders who don't. So why would it not be something that clicks in my head? Oh, we have such and such countries that are lacking of eldership, and we have certain people that we think will be good elders. So why not put them in that program before we actually give them the position?
It's a no-brainer, really. You don't go and you have a doctor and you don't put doctors through their degrees and their bits and pieces. You don't just say to them, oh, you look like a nice doctor, here's a scalpel. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. You don't have somebody who wakes up in the morning, plays football, and then you say, actually, I'd like you to be a primary school teacher. You don't do that. People have to go through a process
Process.
that ensures that they are looking after not just the person, but the persons that will come after, and recognize the responsibility they have for the people that came before them. And if you're not recognizing any of that, then what are you doing? If you
This is
have,
what we've lost.
if you're not doing something for, if you cannot see the population of the African countries for which you have the responsibility of managing, and you are still trying to, fiddle about at the edges, you haven't got that time. There is no time.
Yeah.
It's 5-6 generations will be lost by
Yeah.
the time you make a decision. You haven't got that time.
Mm.
You may not live to the end of that particular thing, but actually what you have put in place, what you should be putting in place, is ensuring that the next generation of people, like those young people, will be saying, I saw that elder. This is what that elder was doing. This is the book that they have written. This is the speech they did on YouTube. Everybody still listens to Stokely Carmichael. Everybody still listens to Malcolm X. Everybody still listens to, Sheikh Anti-Job. And people still, why? Because they weren't concerned about themselves. They were concerned about what they were going to leave afterwards, to ensure
Legacy.
that the next people could walk that path, because it was a path that led somewhere powerful beyond what people can see. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah, Clifton, you want to go? Yeah, go on. Yeah, you want to add to that?
It's such a big question to begin to break down, but I think one of the things that I kind of see, and I love that kind of proverb and that quote that says, "A child who's not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth." Right? Gonna say that again. The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. So I think some of the things we're talking about, that's the outcome we're seeing. Some of the young people are not feeling the embrace, from their community, from the village, from those who they should be getting some warmth from.
Wow.
So and so, to be fair, why should they listen to them? Right. I think what we've got to move from is, and even some of the things that I kind of grew up, we've got to move away from, we've got to move, and it's actually, we've got to lead by example. If I want somebody to do something, I have to live it. Right. It's not enough now for me to say it. Right. And because, and what I like, what they would do, they would call you out on it. Yeah, if they see you not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I think some of what we're seeing is because they're not seeing the elders, right? They're not seeing the leaders doing what they should be doing, right? And in some ways, we also need to put that into kind of context, right? And for me, some of the context is, if we look at, some of the leaders that certainly in the West, boy, them not good. Let's tell it as sorry, let's tell it as it is, right?
Clifton, we don't hold back. We don't hold back, Clifton. Say it as it is, my brother, please.
Yeah, them not good, right? And you know what I mean? And some of the examples they're kind of setting is really shocking.
Yep.
Right. And then we expect our young people to kind of do better. And of course, they're seeing some of this. And it's like, no way. Why should they? Right. Right. So some of them must go, they have to go on better. But also then when you look at the other thing is, and the other thing is that some of the African leaders, where were they taught?
Yeah.
They came, most of them actually were in the West.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, and I like the word because, and what some of them got is training. They didn't get education.
No.
Right. because, you know, and I love the root of what, you know, the word education means. It's drawing out what's already within. It's not putting, you know, things in us, right? It's drawing out that's already within. And so, so when we look around, you know, we shouldn't be too shocked and surprised, right? I mean, you know, because, you know, some of them don't even like themselves. So if they don't like themselves, much less we, right? You know, they don't even like themselves. I mean, and I think, Duka, you was talking about some of the things that they're doing. I mean, and we're following some of them. What's that about?
Yeah, tell me about it.
You know what I mean? And so, and I don't know. Yeah. So for me, it's about us returning to the essence of who we are. I mean, I know I talked about Dr. Wade Nobles, and I mean, one of the things he talked about, he gave the analogy of between a freshwater fish and a seawater fish, right? And the analogy, he said, if you look at freshwater, he said they're kind of dull, right? They don't have the color, and all of that. And he said, you look at seawater fish, their color, they're vibrant, and all of that kind of thing. And he said, and he, you know, and the way he broke it down, it's like raw. I mean, and one of the things he said we're saltwater fish living in fresh water, right? And he said, all sometimes we need is a little salt, right? You know what I mean? Just a little salt, you know, for us to get back our color. And we kind of feel that, you know, if we follow them, then we'll be all right. So, yeah. So for me, yeah, we have lost the essence of who we are, and yeah, you know, there's so much for that.
Okay.
And I think, you know, there's so much to kind of say about that. But I feel, I mean, like Eli says, we have to begin where we are, right? And we have to begin with those who are around us, and we have to lead by example. My children, I mean, and you know, my wife and I, we used to have a running joke. I see one of my children doing something that I know come from me, and I said, boy, where them get that from? Right? And I know it's from me, right? And it's almost, if I want them to do better, I have to be better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to lead by example. It's not enough for me to say one thing and do another. And I think too often, I think we're living in times and spaces now where people are saying one thing and they're doing a complete other. And sometimes even when they're called out, I'm sick and tired of hearing people say, I've done nothing wrong. Right. And you kind of say, you know, and you're kind of thinking, what? You've done nothing wrong. Look what you just did. And you're justifying it behind so many superlatives and all of that. Boy, I can't take it. So I think it's really important for us to kind of start where we are.
It's good to witness the dynamics between you and Eli. I'm glad you balance each other out and provide each other the healing to do the work. But given that we've lost who we are, I would like us actually to take the conversation here so that we can all walk away with it. You said there are questions one must ask oneself.
Yeah.
Who am I?
Yeah.
Am I who I say I am? And this is where the test comes. A lot of us are not living who we say we are. Am I all I ought to be? And oftentimes we are not, because a lot of us are worried about I'll lose my job, or this is how I speak. This is how you speak if you want business. This is how you do this. This is not how we do things. Am I living my life purpose? And this compels us to live our purpose. Not to live this purpose is not to live at all. It is existing in pretense. So as you were talking about how a lot of us are not being who we say we are, several times I've been on LinkedIn saying people like PLO Lumumba, says a lot of good things, but PLO Lumumba is not living who he says he is. I'm forgetting her name right now.
Arikana.
ADDI leader,
Arikana.
Arikana, right? She says a lot of good things, but Arikana is not living what she says. Ruto, right? I've talked to friends in the West who think Ruto is the best thing since sliced bread because he will stand in front of a Frenchman and talk, oh, rah, 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 rah. You know, like the little chihuahua when you meet it at the park where it barks, and then when you go, it's like, and I say to them, Ruto speaks big, but he's not living. Clearly, we can all see he's not living how he says, who he says he is. So please, to the both of you, take us through this and help us understand how we can use this as a grounding, I don't know what to call it, anchor these questions so that we can start moving forward in the way we present ourselves, reminded by these questions to always return to who we truly are.
We kind of start at the beginning. Yeah. So if I was to ask you your names, yeah, who gave you your names? Yeah, what does your name mean? Yeah, what would you tell me?
I was named by my parents. I was named after my father's mother. No, my father's mother's mother.
Right.
My great grandmother. Yes.
And why was you named after your great grandmother?
You know, it's funny because when I went home last year, I asked my father the same thing. And for him, I believe it was more an honor of the ancestor, right?
Right.
But the thing he said to me is the two of us, our personalities are very different. She was more the quiet one who was not outspoken, and I am very outspoken. So it's interesting.
Okay. And did you tell me what your name means? I mean, I don't know if you told me.
Duku in Kikamba, from the Akamba nation of the eastern side of Nsia Ubuntu, means a female child born at night. Otuko is night. So the male version of this is Kituko or Motuko. So okay. I'm the female version of it.
Okay, born at night. And what symbolism does that have for you, or in terms of even for your parents?
I'm not sure about my parents because they're very Catholic and
Okay.
very much against connecting with this way of talking about things. But for me, now that I'm returning to who I am, and as you ask that question, and as I remember that in our culture, we say that the hour of the spirits, right? Nighttime,
yes.
The hour of the spirits.
Yeah.
And being that I'm feeling a very strong, I've been saying lately, and I'm still trying to understand whether this is me who's wishing so much that this is true or whether it's actually happening, that I'm feeling a very great connection with Malcolm X's spirit. I don't know what it is. So that connecting with spirits, and recently before this, I was feeling a very strong connection to Ida B. Wells' spirit.
Okay.
So whatever that tells you, yes.
Okay. And would you say you've always had that spirit as far back as you can remember?
I believe so. When I was young, a toddler, I used to hang out with a gentleman who would care for our livestock. And when they were slaughtering in preparation for giving meat to the community, I was always there with them. And he named me a name that I'm not going to use since it's very intimate. But he named it to me because he believed I was sharp. So, yes.
All right. Thank you. Right. So, and I suppose the reason why I'm asking is because I get a real sense in terms of how I only met you earlier, right? And I get a sense of that kind of fire and spirit, right? That real fire and spirit. And I get a real sense that who you are or who you're becoming is part of what you're here for.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And is it fair to say that if you're not doing that, then what happens when you're not living to that spirit?
So I was actually, when this spirit started forcing me to reclaim it, because that's literally what happened. It forced me to reclaim it. I was working at the Department of Justice, the United States Department of Justice, and I was fighting the spirit and survival, having an income. And many people were saying you have to think about your children. You cannot fully embrace this spirit. I'm simplifying the role it is to embrace the spirit, because you will lose a job. What about your children, right? So you're struggling, and you know the pull is so strong.
Yeah.
So that existence in the struggle was getting me sick. Literally, I was in hospital twice in that time. I was not myself. I was very, very much depressed and feeling like I was betraying my people. So it's not a fun existence. It's not.
Thank you. Right. And I suppose, yeah. So do you feel more alive now?
Yes. It's painful because, I mean, when you feel more alive, like you said, it's a lonely journey and people turn away from you. But yes, when I'm by myself, I know this is me being myself fully. Yes, and it's very rewarding.
Okay. Thank you. Oladele, what about you? In
Can you
terms
say
of,
that? Can you? Yeah, go on.
yeah,
Repeat that.
yeah, in terms of your name, who gave it to you? What does your
Okay.
name mean?
My name was given to me by I think my grandparents. It's Oladele, which means wealth has come home.
Wealth has come home.
Yeah.
Okay. And how do you feel about that? I love the look of the faces. How do you feel about that in terms of your name and what it conjures up?
My name basically means that there's a wealth that I need to manifest into, that my grandparents gave to me, and it needs to happen. And I've been basically, it's not been happening. So I'm in that space now where I need to be myself, and that's where
Okay.
I'm at right now.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And I suppose all that was just kind of where we start in the way that we work,
Mm.
right? And and that even as a start kind of reminds people, right? And I also say certainly kind of in the West, it was no accident that our name was taken from us.
Mm.
No accident whatsoever. All right. Our names and our kind of language and all of those things, because those very same things are the kind of cornerstones of who we are. So it's no wonder that some of us are quite lost, because if they're taken away, right, um, it's like we do kind of question that. And and I suppose we kind of look at, regardless of what your name is or what name
Mm.
you've been given, our parents gave it to us for a reason, right?
Yep.
And more often than not, and it's really looking at how we can channel or really look into that, because sometimes it's in the essence of that is the essence of who we are and what we're meant to be. But because we're so far away from that, we don't even know that. Yeah. And I mean, Eli, and when Eli talks about language, and I love, Eli breaking some of that down. And he was saying, even some of the things, the sayings that we've grown up with, it has to be said in a certain way, right, for it to really permeate,
Mm. Yeah.
right? And actually, the way that is said, that's coming from a line of generations that has
Mm.
said that before. Yeah. And there's kind of power and wisdom and knowledge in it. And I suppose the other thing is, and I can't remember who said it, and it could have even been Wade Nobles. He says, unfortunately, what happens to a lot of us is that we have other people that are interpret stuff for us and
Mm.
breaks it down, right? And more often than not, some of them are not seeing it through African eyes.
Yeah.
And when we have people that see things through African eyes, it can be very, very different,
Yes. I agree.
right? And I think that's what's kind of missing. Um, and all of that. I mean, my work, I kind of want to, you know, what pays the bills, and I work with young people, and I love working with young people, and part of it is because they tell me sometimes in words and their behavior what they think of, you know, if I don't come correct, they will let me know. All right. However, what I'm will finding is actually being with them and being honest and true, right? Then some amazing things can happen. Right. And I think, yeah, I lost the point. I was going to kind of go on to say something, but I just really feel that it's just really important just to kind of be present and to kind of be there and believe it. Oh yeah, the point I was going to make, I tell one of the things that I say to young people is that I get paid for things I used to get in trouble for at school. Right? That's normally one of my intros. And I kind of say to them, what might I've got in trouble for at school? And they will say, sometimes they say for poor behavior, and they said, because through talking, and I say, yeah, right. I said, I get paid to talk, right? But I also said I had to learn how to do that appropriately, right? And I also like playing games, and with young people, but also with the work I do with adults, I play games. We play games and all of that, and they have meaning and purpose. It's not just for the fun of it. But I tell them that I get paid to do that. All right. That work has kind of taken me not only nationally in terms of, you know, where I live, it's also afforded me the opportunity to work with people from, you know, from different parts of the world. And I suppose I'm saying that because that's part of the kind of gift that I was given. My dad's a storyteller, and I never knew it. You talk to my dad has a story about everything, right? Every little thing, my dad's a storyteller. And I've actually inherited that from him. So there's an aspect of me that's also a storyteller, right? Not in no formal way, but I love sharing stories. And again, sometimes anytime anybody has something to say, it's like I've got my own story to tell it, right? And so I'm just saying that more often than not, right, these are some of the things that have even been driven out about from some of our young people, right? And I remember Dr. Joy DeGruy in her book Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I love that book, and I think there was a couple of things that she really said, and I think somebody even said it. She said the greeting in South Africa, and Eli said it, is translated means I see you, right? And how amazing that is to be seen, right? And even in the book, he says that the greeting in Kenya, right, translated means how are the children, right? That really struck me, right? And I think Eli alluded to it. It's not just about who you are, yeah, it's about wider. And I suppose when we even look at those kind of questions, more often than not, most of us are not seen. And if we're not seen, we can't be surprised that people are doing all manner of things to be noticed. Yeah, if you're not being noticed, the extremes you would go through, right, to be noticed. So that's one of the things we're seeing a lot, right? And so I suppose those are some of the things that I kind of say, you know, we need to be yeah, there's so many things that we just need to be doing. But I also realized that, and we've all got a different purpose, right? And I'm saying that because I realized that my purpose in terms of what I do, I ain't going to influence those above. That's not my purpose. That's not what I'm here for, right? What I am here for is to work with young people and those who work with young people. And that's the kind of impact that I can have to those who are coming before, coming after me. And also say, in terms of my age, I'm coming near to the end of my career, right, in whatever it is. So I see part of my purpose and responsibility is also to support those who are coming up in the career that I've chosen behind me.
Yeah.
Right. So they can be the best that they can be, right, and have the influence that I may not have anymore with the young people that they work with. Yeah. And so I see that's my purpose, and how I can influence what I do. Other people, those who who their purpose is very different, and so there's different things for them to do. Yeah. But this is for me to do, and all of that. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Yeah.
I like that you said that, because that is also part of being an elder, right?
Yes.
Preparing young ones to take on your place. And unfortunately, a lot of elders, because of the Western influence, they're caught up in living legacies, and it's almost like they don't want to share that legacy, right? So they intentionally, through that, do not mentor people to take their place because they feel like they need to exist. It's a fear that is not true, right? Because they will exist, but it's a fear that is not true, that they will be forgotten, and they have to hold on to who they are and not share it because they lose it. And it's a very Western way of thinking, because in our culture, you understand that you're best reflected by the people you leave behind, right? Your legacy lives on through the people you leave behind, not necessarily just you and what you did. So I'm glad you mentioned that, and I hope it goes to the ears of many elders today, that if you are skilled, if you have been called to do something, you must
Yeah.
mentor young ones to take on when you're gone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Someone-
I feel. Sorry, you finish, Andrew. 'Cause you want to? You finish?
Someone's asking me to tell you about Kubuntu. I guess, Eli, you mentioned you don't know what languages we speak. We Bongi Ubuntu is the organization that we are starting. Let me not say try. We are working very hard to build this community that our elder Clifton is describing. Currently, we are looking at a location in Nsi Ubuntu, Africa, that we would like to settle physically on. But part of what we are doing is teaching this, reclaiming and teaching and cleansing our language of unity, which is otherwise known as Kiswahili, but we are calling it We're calling it Kubuntu.
Kubuntu. Okay, I didn't know
Right? Why are we changing the name? And I'll put the name right there. Kubuntu. We're changing the name because that Ki in our culture means language of. The Ba, the Bantu, Batswana, but this, that means the people of, right? The Ki means language of. So when you say Ki Swahili, you're saying the language of Swahili people.
Okay.
Swahili people are descendants of Arabs. They're literally the children of Arab invaders and our ancestors on the eastern part of Africa. The language Kiubuntu existed way before the Arabs landed. This is one of the things they have stolen from us. So in order to reclaim our language, we must stop calling it, we must stop identifying it with their descendants and start taking it back to our ancestors who really, really created this. And why Kubuntu? Because it was a collection of Bantu nations who spoke different languages, who brought those different languages in order to create peace and oneness together to build this new language, Kubuntu, which is otherwise known as Kiswahili. So the encouragement to everyone is, as we continue to reclaim our culture, like you both very well explained, as we continue to reclaim our positions as elders, when those of us who end up getting there, and also as young ones who are our responsibility is to listen to the elders, right? Our responsibilities, and also maybe remind the elders if we're seeing them not, because we are all now in a very corrupt state of being, if we're seeing them not being the elders that both Clifton and Eli described, suggesting, hey, there's a program that Clifton and Eli are running.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're
Absolutely.
gonna talk about that actually. We're gonna talk about that. 'Cause, yeah,
Okay.
we need to talk
Cool.
about it.
Grandpa, it seems
Yeah.
like Grandpa is sitting there saying, I'm so bored, I'm so frustrated. Grandpa, there's a program, actually, there's a program
Yeah.
that Eli and Clifton are running. I think you would love. So,
Beautiful.
Okay, guys. Let's tell us about the program. Yeah, because you posted it. So just share the program. Let people know exactly what the program is, the eldership program that you guys run. Talk about it, please, so people who want to. Because
Okay.
based on everything you said so far, we've lost it. We're losing it. And you guys are doing the work to bring us back to where we need to be. Because our elders need to be responsible, and responsibility upon us. It's very incumbent on us to actually be the lead, to lead the next generation to where we need to be there. And we as elders are losing that responsibility. That's why we don't get the respect we deserve. So what you're doing is very important. So please speak to
May I do that, Brother Clifton?
Oh, you do it so well, Eli. So go.
That's you. Right. So we have a great opportunity. We're doing the program for people who are who need to do that online, i.e., doing it different countries. We've got an online edition that we teach on, which is the US version. Well, it's not the US version, but it's organized from California in the US. But it's our program. That's what we're teaching on. It's the same program, and then we do the program also in person in the UK in London, and we've got a couple of dates that we've got the program running. And there's also an opportunity where when you've completed the program, that the program, there are kind of monthly support sessions where people who've completed the program can join in with people who've done that and really talk about some of the issues that may have come up for you. So you may have completed the program, and the idea of you standing in your space. So an example would be when I'm working with, and I've said this before, when I'm working with a young person, part of my responsibility is saying, well, I'm happy to support you, but you can either call me Mr. Anderson or uncle or sir. You know, those are your opportunities. You're not, you don't have the, well, that's just for me. You don't have the authority to call me by my first name. So those are the sorts of things that require. And I think also, if just like Brother Clifton, there are certain things that he will do being an elder, which is very different to everything else that he might do elsewhere. And it's clear that actually we don't just go home and take the eldership cape off. It's on all the time. You know, it doesn't mean we can't play and have fun and do something, but the cloak is on, and that's how you see us. So in terms of the program is there to ensure to get access to people, to get access to so you can get access to the program. Now, the actual program itself, although we're talking about understanding eldership, the actual program is a full year program, and it's 4 different gateways to go through. What we found is that people are so impacted. I don't even think impacted. Yes, there is a word called impacted. People are so impacted by the first 6 weeks that requires for some people years just to process what they've done in the first 6 weeks. So we would ask people, if you're going to join us for the understanding eldership, which is that first 6 weeks, and thereafter be a part of the kind of monthly sessions that we can give you access to, give you information to, and you will be able to talk about some of the things that are still making you feel as though you're not quite who you think you are. And it is a difficult situation because once you understood that, it's not just about ticking a box. You know, it's like reading a book. You're not just reading a book. What it is, it becomes a lifestyle. It becomes a life journey. And the life journey requires support. And that's what we're building in as well. So many of the people who've gone through programs that we've developed has groups, have bonded together and stayed like that because they found that there's support for them. For Understand Eldership, it's they they're bonding on a monthly basis, even though they've really developed that. So no, so the program that we have is around 225 for the 6 weeks. Once you go through that, then we're looking at how we can deliver the next programs. And that's the 225 is for the 6 weeks to do that. What we have to organize, because it'd be interesting. Have we been a little bit busy, Brother Clifton? I think we have.
Yeah.
That when the US group came over, we did the first 2 sessions of what was called G2. So it's G1, G2, G3, G4. There are 4 different. Now we repeated G1, which is the Understanding Eldership, and that's had such an impact that people have been able to go to G2. G2 requires bringing people together, and so I think we're going to be looking at G2 fuller next. Is it next year in the US? Are we going?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So we're going to be delivering G2 over there in the US, and it may well be that we're going to deliver G2 here. So yeah. So right. All sorts of things about payment plans and support. That's fine. Definitely, we can have that conversation. The most important thing is that you are committed to it. That's critical. Once you've committed to it, then things we can work out. But it's really critically important that people make the first step to do the program. We don't know. So far, I think we may have had, is about 50 people have gone through the program so far? Probably 50 odd people.
Yeah.
About 50 people have gone through the program. And so you can see that there is we can talk about the impact these people have gone through the programs. Families have changed and restructured themselves. People have recognized things about people they've been married to for X amount of years they didn't realize. Those are things that are happening when you start, as you said, Ola, people actually reveal themselves to themselves in a safe space, because walking up and down the streets of the UK is not a safe place. So when you're in that space where you are safe, where you are supported, where you are hugged and embraced, that's where you can release those things about who you are. And I can tell you from my experience, seeing who I truly am is a very refreshing experience. It's very powerful. And once you let that out, everybody sees it. It's very difficult to see when somebody just radiates power, you know it, you experience it. And everyone who's come out of those programs have done exactly the same thing, precisely the same thing. The hope is that this is going to be, we're looking at this program being delivered across the US, in Australia, hopefully with the guidance of the ancestors, hopefully in our homeland. But in a way, it's got to be where, as the Honourable Marcus Garvey talks about, when we talk about Africa for Africans, these are the people we're looking at. And we're actually moving in the space of many people, many ancestors who've walked that path and have kind of prepared that path for us to do that. All we need is people to really make the difference and say, actually, if I eat this pineapple from Ghana or Nigeria or Kenya, it's going to taste different from when it's in Iceland or Belgium or the UK. Once you
Yeah.
recognize that, you never eat the same fruit again. You
Mm.
never do it. You never do it. You actually say, I'll wait until I go back there to eat the fruit. Or if you're eating this, you know you're not going to get the best thing. You know that. I don't think many people know the difference. I think they just
Right.
eat and hope that they're going to get that, but it's completely different. So this is
Yeah.
And
what we. Sorry, go ahead.
you know, the sad thing about that, Eli, is that the West is now trying to take away our different tasting fruit by
Oh yes,
introducing GMOs. So
Yeah.
I have encouraged my fellow Kenyans, because currently in Kenya there's a policy that is criminalizing and penalizing people who preserve indigenous original seeds or
yeah,
who share them. And I am saying, I spoke last week in one of our sessions on Friday, and I said to seek liberation for Wana Ubuntu African people is to literally agree to be criminalized, because that
yes,
essentially is what it is. And this policy is an example. I will be breaking this policy in Kenya, and I
good.
risk being jailed for 2 years or paying 1 million Kenya shillings fine, or both. That is the penalty. To save original seeds and share them with fellow Kenyans so that we are growing seeds that are not GMO, that is a
Yeah.
crime currently in Kenya. Now, you tell
Wow.
me, Brother Clifton and Brother Eli, do I accept my purpose where I know I need to preserve our healthy food and not allow this poisonous food to come to our people? Or do I fall in line and get scared and just say, you know what? It is the law. Let me follow the law.
Mm, Brother Clifton.
Yeah, and just to back off that, Clifton, we have the same. Obviously, I think it's about last week or so. Same thing in Nigeria. They basically introduced a law which basically brings in corn, maize, GMO. So basically, this is a trend going all over Africa with our compromised leaders basically just falling in line with whatever the I don't know what to call it, because, yeah, but whatever they're pushing, they're basically the gatekeepers are basically falling in line. And like Undoku said, we are basically losing ourselves by accepting all the crap that they're pushing on us, and we need to push back. So yeah, I'll let you go.
Well, I don't know what to say. I, I, yeah, um, I'm lost in some ways about how to respond to some of that. But I suppose there's another thing that actually says it's not new.
Mm.
Yeah, what we're facing is not new. Um, I remember, I think it was Dr. Charles Fink that I first heard say, and he might not be the first to ever say it, but I mean, one of his mantra was, the only thing new is what's been forgotten,
Mm.
right? That there's nothing new. It's only what's been forgotten. And what happens is that some of those things, they get repackaged, right? They get repurposed and then presented to us as if it's not something new. But when you look at when you look behind it, not new at all. Yeah. And I suppose what's interesting is that sometimes they do need to repackage something new, right? As if it's new, because the old ways, I mean, what they tried before never work, right? People weren't having it, or people protest. They did whatever it is they need to do. So then it kind of gets you know, represented and repackaged in a new way. And in some ways, and even the format that's used in itself is not new. Yeah. And so I suppose it's about, yeah, what we're going to do.
Mm, mm,
And sometimes what we know that as a mass, when when we come out en masse against stuff, they more often than not they have no other options but to let it go. Yeah, they have no other options, because enforcing it becomes to try and enforce it becomes untenable. It doesn't become productive for them to do it, and then they will kind of regroup and look at how they can get it in another way. I mean, that's one of the things that kind of comes up for me. I think the other thing that comes up for me is that, and I kind of said, one of the things that really struck me, and it's when I went to Ghana and I went to the Cape Coast and Elmina Castle. And we're not supposed to be here, you know. When you look at the what we've faced, right, throughout history, we are not meant to be here. And we're certainly not meant to be here, even as sane human beings, even having this discussion. All right. However, I mean, one of the things that kind of came up for me, and I've heard other people say in lots of different ways, is we're kind of divine people, because no matter what's been done and tried to be, persecute and all of those kind of things, we're still here.
We're still standing.
We're still standing, right? And and not only are we standing, some of us are, we're not taking it lying down. We're not, just kind of saying, all right. And so I think we need to remind ourselves of some of that some of the things, regardless of what's been put in, all right, some of the things that we've kind of done as a people that continues to still put us here. And it's really, really important, even when, they tried to separate us and did a really good job. But, at the end of, it's interesting when I had even the kind of term, what's happening, brother, people, at the end of slavery, people almost searching the whole of the Americas looking for relatives. You know what I mean? And so we're remarkable, resilient people. And I think we have to give ourselves some, do that regardless of what them put in place, them can't, because they can't. No, because
they try. They've been trying, but it's
and they continue to try.
They keep trying.
And yet
our
still
ancestors have got our back, man.
Yeah, we're still here, and I think that's for me something that we need to really hold on to, And in the process, we're going to lose a few away, through whatever means, you know what I mean. But we're still here, and I think that's really important for us to hold on to, and all of that. So I mean, that's the only thing that really kind of strikes me around that.
Thanks, Clifton.
Yeah.
Eli, what do you want to say to that? Because we're going to start running up now because of time. What would you like to say?
The only thing the only thing I remember is that there's a scene in Matrix 2 or Matrix 3 where Morpheus stands up and says, "And we are still here." That we are still here. We are divine beings. This is the thing, and we work with our relationships based on frequency and vibration and spirit. Those are the things that are fundamental. Everything for us is part of who we are, and we are everything else. And once we begin to understand that, we become sentient. We move into a whole different space. And as we say, when we may be running this part of the course, but actually, we were always supposed to be running it. We were born to do it. We were born to be on this podcast. You know, imagine out of 7 billion people, the 4 of us are here today. That was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
I couldn't be involved in that. That's spirit. That's ancestors. You've got the warrior woman on this corner, and you've got king on the other side, and you've got a king down here, you know. And I'm trying to be. I mean, these things are here. The impact we are doing is on a level quantum energy. That's what we are doing. Whoever's going to see this is going to be changed forever. So, yeah, we are supposed to be here, but we're here for a reason. We're here for a reason, and it's quite refreshing just to remember that actually this is powerful. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I also want to just add, and what's amazing, right, for me, is the other thing, when we sit on our own kind of cultural ideals, right, we create something, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
the other thing is, I mean, you know, we create something quite special and unique, right? Because the other thing is, well, right, if we was to also kind of even go a little bit deeper, we come from different places, right? We also speak, you know, different languages and all of that kind of thing. But when we come in that kind of real spirit, right, of really connected, none of that matters.
Mm.
Yeah, none of that really matters. And I always say as well, and I've been really clear even about the work that I do. The moment I kind of feel, you know what, I know it all. I know it's time for me to stop. Right.
Mm.
And I also know that's also the time I become very dangerous. Right.
Mm.
Because it also means that I feel that I've got nothing else to learn. Every time we run a program, I'm a better human being because of it. Right. Yeah, I learn things even about myself and each other that I didn't know before. And for me, that's the beauty and that's the richness, right? And and for me, that's kind of what really kind of then connects us, right? Because we have more in common, right? More that brings us together than we have that it separates us. But what we sometimes do is, and sometimes we believe the hype, we believe the lies that are told about us and all of that. And for me, that's not true, right? And then we also try and put that whole black thing into it being one thing when it's many, right? And all of that.
Multi-dimensional.
Yeah. Oh man.
It's
And for
huge.
me, that's the beauty. You know what I mean? If somebody says, I mean, I don't want a world that's full of me. That would be quite wrong, right? And all of that. I want the richness and the diversity and all of that kind of thing. So, you know, and in some ways, you know, we live in societies and, you know, we live in countries that are trying to create clones, right, of themselves.
Tell me about it.
You know, and we need to stop that. You know, we need to, you know, and realize that uno do one yeah, uno do one we, you know, you do you,
Yeah.
we do us.
And that's the thing. That's the thing. You know, say something what you're saying up, guys. You know, for anybody who's listening out there, you listen to what these elders have said. We need to be who we're meant to be. We are Alkebulan. We are mother of mankind. We existed before any other. We are unique beings. You know, we operate on a different dimension that nobody can actually understand. They try so hard to understand us. They package it, they cage it, but we're still thriving. So, my African brothers and sisters, stop copying, stop trying to be who you're not. The system is basically taking you away from who you're meant to be. This is the biggest challenge we're all facing because everybody wants to be part of this system. And the more you try to be part of it, you're losing yourself completely away from who you're meant to be. We're not meant to be caged.
I
We
was,
are
I was,
Africans. Go
I
on.
was, I was going to say, Oladile, that this is literally what that sentence that you all hear. This is not the way we do things. We do things a certain way in the West, right?
Yeah.
This is how we do things. That's robot. That Clifton was
It's
saying,
robotic.
robotic.
Yeah.
That manufacturing us or coding us in a way that is, this is all we do, right? So if you veer away slightly, you're reminded, no, that's not how we do things. I'm like, excuse my language. I know this. I need to have, you know what? Maybe let me be cautious since I'm aware. I want to say F it, right? I don't care about the way you do things. I have my own path. This is the way I do things.
Yeah.
And I, as a full being that has a right to be on this planet, to exist, can choose for myself how I do things. And as long as I'm not harming any other human being, as long as the way I do things is bringing life and nurturing life, step aside, please.
Yes. And this is basically what people need to understand. People basically, you cannot complete cloning. You can't be in a copycat of other people. You are unique beings. Africans are unique beings. Basically, we're here. So stop trying to fit in. The more we keep fitting in, the more we're going to lose our independence. We're going to lose basically everything that we stand for as human beings. We cannot copy. We can never, that's basically why that's why we're all struggling. All the isms that you're copying is basically taking you away from your individual uniqueness as Africans, guys. We cannot keep pushing what we're not.
Yeah.
Every conversation we have with the guests that we have with our community, they're not even guests, right? With our community who joins us in these conversations is always so rewarding and so grounding. And I appreciate it. I appreciate both of you.
Yeah.
And like I said to both of you, I hope we find an affordable way of running your program so that more people have access. And I do understand the reason behind pricing, right? Because we do exist in a capitalist world where you have to pay for costs of this and that and that. I understand pricing, but we must, as a people collectively, so that we have these resources accessible to more, figure out ways of making them more accessible. So if you're out there, you're blessed with the finances, reach out, please, and help us figure out a way to make these programs more accessible to our people.
Thank you very much. Okay, just to round up, guys. If people want to reach you, Cliffy, you go first. You being the elder. If people want to reach out to you, how can they reach out to you? Contact details or whatever you want to share. Just let the people know.
Well, that's a difficult one. And the reason why I'm saying difficult, because even though I'm on social media, I don't visit social media.
I noticed.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing, Oladele. He's our elder, and we are the conduit to him. We will guide people to him. He doesn't need to be on social media.
Fair enough. I noticed. I noticed that when I was searching you out.
Yeah. I'm very rarely on. I think I initially put myself on some of them, and I'm not updated my kind of profile for almost since the inception. I mean, I suppose one of the ways is that I mean, Eli and I, we do a lot of work together.
Yeah.
Right. And certainly through Eli's contact Story Aid. That's one way. And I'm looking at, I mean, developing my kind of my profile, because I get cussed all the time. Right. I'm not gonna lie, by people saying, where do I reach you, and all of that kind of thing. So I will make that available. But at the moment, I'm loath to even give the kind of my LinkedIn and all of that kind of thing, because I just don't use it. So I'm sorry. And I'm very old school, right? And by that,
don't say that.
Yeah, by that, I suppose it's almost like if people will find me.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that's it. Over to you, Eli. You go. Eli's more tech savvy and more than I am.
Well, Eli did share
dear.
his contact, and we just put it in the chat. So yes, that is where you can reach him. But go ahead, Eli.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. One of the things I've got to be doing over the next month is dropping a lot of different things. So, but it's about what makes this work, and so it's about letting go of some things that are just not working for the work that we need to do. But yes, you can get me on those things. Definitely on LinkedIn. I normally respond fairly quickly to LinkedIn for what's happening, and if people connect with me, then I can make sure that we conversations happen. So yes, I'm happy for that to happen. That's me.
And
Thank you
if
very
you're
much.
interested, Clifton, if you're interested, and I will, Oladele, do you mind sharing that?
I'm copying
Thank
it. Yeah.
you. If you're
Right.
interested, someone in the chat is saying, if you need a private assistant, they are available.
Okay.
Good,
So if you do, reach out
good.
to us and we'll let them know. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And what I have done is that I put my email address because I more respond to email than
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
You know,
I've
that's
shared
really
that.
important. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good, 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 good. Wow.
All right. It's a pleasure
Wow.
as always, Eli. Absolutely, thank you for
Yeah.
coming. And Clifton, thanks for being our community. Nice to meet you, my brother. We really appreciate you. Just to sum this up, guys, eldership is about responsibility. Eldership is about responsibility. You cannot just say you're an elder and shirk away from the responsibility, because you have kids, generations unborn who are looking up
Yeah.
to you, and you have to sow the seed. If you
And can
don't
I
sow
just,
the seed, yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, and I think we need to kind of, responsibility has the
Mm,
connotation of being that it's burdensome, right? It's heavy, and responsibility isn't that. I
mm,
love what people say. It's the ability to respond, right,
mm,
to whatever face us, and that can still be. I look at it now that what I do, it's a joy. I get to do this. I
mm,
enjoy this. It's not heavy. It's not like, oh man, all of that kind of thing. And I think it's important, right, when we kind of even explore the word responsibility. And I think that's why some people run from it. And I think it's important just to put that out there.
But
So,
as you put that, and I am reminded that I think a lot of people run away from it because they're not living their purpose. Their
yeah, Tuesday.
responsibility is not in their purpose, and
Yeah,
therefore it's a burden. But if you're living
yeah,
your purpose, the responsibility is not a burden.
yeah, yeah.
yeah. And
Mic drop.
on that note, yeah, good.
Mic
On
drop.
that note, yeah, on that note, the reason why it's a burden is because you're not living as to who you're meant to be.
Right.
Thank
Like
you,
that.
guys. Eli,
Thank you.
Clifton, Nduku, my sister.
No, we are not ending. We have two things to. We have to ask them the question from the previous guest, and they have
Okay,
to ask the
have you
question.
got
Oh,
the question for me? I can't remember the question.
Oh my God, and my notebook is at home today. I'm not.
Oh no. Yeah, I'm
Where's
trying to find the
Sam?
question.
Can you reach out to Sam quickly if we can reach out to him as
Okay,
we
that's it.
chat? Yes.
Okay, while you guys are waiting for that, can you? Okay, we need a question for you a question for you for our next guest, please. And let's start with that.
Eli, question
Oh,
for
question.
an
A
Yeah,
question for
question for
my
our
next
next guest,
guest.
please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the question for the next guest has got to be: are you aware? Are you living your life's purpose? That's got to be the question.
Wow. Are
Sorry, that was kind
you?
of like,
Yeah.
but it is. Sorry.
Yeah. Based on what we've said, brilliant. Are you living your life's purpose? I'm trying to find. I wrote that question down somewhere. Just bear with me. Just don't go. I'm coming. Let me just find my notebook because I know I
It
wrote
was
it
the
down somewhere.
conversation with the children, no? It was a
No,
conversation with
no. Chester Higgins.
Oh, yes. Okay, let me find it.
Oh, Professor Higgins.
Yes.
Yes. And I think it had something to do with photography. How are you
Oh.
showing? Yes, let me find it. Yes, 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 yes,
Ah.
yes, yes. There we go. All right. Anyone in the audience in our community remember what the question our elder Chester Higgins left us with? Please share it.
I don't know what that word means. It got Asante Sana. I'm okay with that.
Asante Sana is
Um,
Ubuntu. It means thank you very much. Asante is thank
ah,
you. Sana is very
Okay,
much.
I've got the question, guys. I've found it.
Good.
The question was, how do we come to a sense of worthiness? How much are you worth?
Oh, yes. How much are you worth was the question. Yes.
Yes.
if you were.
How much are you worth?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to answer. I mean, I realized that actually I'm priceless,
Ooh.
right? And there's nobody like me,
I
right?
love that.
I'm priceless, and what I do and what I bring is kind of unique in of itself. That's what really springs to mind for me. And it's funny because if you'd asked me that question a good number of years ago, or not even years ago, even much more recently, I might have struggled. But I kind of realize now that me just being me in the world is becoming really priceless. And it gives me just being me, I realize it gives permission for people to be themselves. And that in itself is priceless.
But do you understand the deeper meaning in that as a people who were priced and sold, as far as liberating ourselves to have that mindset now?
Deep.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
You can't really
Eli,
answer
you want
that.
to follow? You want to follow that?
Yeah,
want to follow
Eli,
that.
sorry.
No,
yeah.
that's all right. You've said sorry too many times now.
I say that all the time.
time.
I think it's part of Dr. DeGroy says it's part of that post-traumatic
Yeah,
slave
post-traumatic,
syndrome.
Stress, isn't
We
it?
always apologize to the master. Yes.
It's true. Listen. I can't. I echo everything that Brother Clifton has said. I guess there was outside one very quickly, about 10, 15 seconds. I was outside a underground tube station, and I've been accosted by people who want to save me, and I spent the time saying to them, okay, I am the universe and the universe is me. So how are you defining God? And for the next month, they kept trying to convert me after that conversation. So that's my answer to the question.
You just had to go there and give a deep answer to a deep question. You just
Listen,
could not be the elder.
I'm following the king that's sitting right next to me here. I can't say anything. I have to be exactly on his level. Can't be anything less.
Oh, and your
Brilliant,
question,
man.
let's remind everyone your question so that they can sit with it.
The question is, are you living your life's purpose? Guys, this is for everybody who's listening right now. Are you living your life's purpose? Are you doing the work that your creator has given you to do? Unfortunately, the work that you're meant to do is not going to come through the matrix that we're following right now. It's basically nothing to do with that. So, on that note, I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we're looking forward to another one in 2 weeks' time where we're going to be talking about our deities, African deities. That's what we're going to be talking about. We're talking about African deities. People say our deities are demonic. Our deities are not demonic. They define us. So we're going to be talking about African deities. It's going to be very, 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 very informative. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you, everybody. Guys, don't go yet. Thanks. Go.
Thank you, Eli. Thank you. And this is something that is funny because when I do this and I follow protocol and I say Asante Mzee Anderson and I use that last name right out of respect, some of the people don't want to be called that. So it's a tricky one. But thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'm just gonna